Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to take a closer look at something I know a lot of you are probably thinking about if you're planning a trip: Maui car rental prices.
Yeah, it's definitely a hot topic.
Specifically, we're zeroing in on where things stand right now, May 18th, 2025, with Memorial Day just next week and summer basically knocking on the door.
Exactly. And we've got this really detailed report. It gives us a good snapshot of what's happening at Kaului Airport, OGG, and helps us sort of see the bigger trends.
Right. So our goal today is to really dig into this, figure out what's pushing these prices around right now, and give you a clearer picture of, well, what to expect maybe in the next few weeks.
Hopefully help you make some smart decisions for your travel plans.
Yeah, exactly. Give you an edge if Maui's on your list. Okay, so let's start big picture. What are prices looking like right now this week?
Well, the main thing, I guess, is that prices have generally ticked upwards compared to those 52-week lows we saw just last week.
Okay, moving up.
Yeah. So looking at the week of May 19th, the cheapest economy car you can find at Kaului Airport is running about $227 for the week.
$227. And how does that compare to last week?
That's a pretty significant jump, actually. It's up 34% from just 7 days ago.
Wow, 34%. That's noticeable. What about other kinds of cars? Same story.
Mostly, yeah.
Yeah.
Mid-size cars, they're up about 28%. Convertibles saw a smaller bump, like 4%.
Okay.
SUVs are up a fair bit, 27%. And minivans saw, a really big jump, 43%.
Oof, 43% for minivans. If you're traveling with a family, that one's going to sting a bit.
Definitely.
Are there any exceptions? Anything not going up?
Yeah, a couple of interesting ones. Jeep prices, they're holding steady, still at that record low of $305 a week with Thrifty.
Huh, that's odd given the trend.
It is. And maybe even more surprisingly, the price for a 7-seat SUV, that's actually down 15%, also Thrifty.
Down. Okay, so it's not just a straight line upwards for everything. We've got Jeeps staying low and big SUVs getting cheaper.
Right. So, 4 out of the 7 categories we track went up, suggesting maybe a correction after those lows, like you said?
Yeah, maybe just firming up before the holiday. What are the main reasons the report points to for this firming up?
It really boils down to 2 things mainly. First, Memorial Day is literally next week. That always pushes demand.
Sure, holiday travel.
And second, the summer travel season is right around the corner, kicking off properly in mid-June. So rental companies are likely adjusting for that expected increase in demand.
Okay, it makes sense. So looking ahead then, the next few weeks, what's the vibe? Should people be booking now? Or is there maybe still a chance prices might dip again before summer really hits?
Well, if you look at the online reservation systems right now, they're definitely signaling more increases are coming.
How so?
The prices for advanced bookings, if you're renting a car starting, say, a few weeks from now, those prices are generally higher than what you'd pay if you booked today for a rental starting tomorrow.
Okay. Can you give us an example, like how much higher are we talking?
Sure. The report looked at this. A 1-week rental starting in 5 weeks at OGG at the airport. If you book that today, it's about 19% more expensive than booking the same kind of car today for a rental starting tomorrow.
19% more just for booking 5 weeks out.
Yeah. And it's similar off-airport, too. About 18% more expensive for that 5-week out booking compared to the last-minute one.
Okay, so the booking systems are pushing people towards booking sooner rather than later, it seems. But you mentioned conflicting signals. Does historical data tell a different story?
It kind of does, yeah. This is where it gets a bit nuanced. Looking back at data from, 2013 to 2018.
Okay, pre-pandemic patterns.
Right. Historically, prices tended to bottom out in early June. Then they'd start climbing for the peak summer months.
So a June dip.
Often, yes. And specifically for this period, mid-May to early June, last-minute prices back then were often flat, or sometimes they even decreased closer to the rental date.
Interesting. So history suggests maybe waiting could pay off in early June, even though the current booking systems show higher prices further out.
That's the potential contradiction, yeah. The historical pattern suggests those higher advance prices might not stick, and we could see a dip. However...
There's always a however.
Right. The report also notes a recent change, just this week, actually. The price for booking last minute, like for tomorrow, is now only slightly higher than booking 1 week in advance.
Okay, what does that imply?
It could mean that things are genuinely firming up more this year. Maybe those historical last-minute dips won't be as pronounced, or maybe they won't happen at all for certain periods.
Let's make that concrete with the Memorial Day example you brought up earlier. How does that play out?
Okay, so for a week covering Memorial Day, booking today, probably around $234. But if you'd booked that same week 4 weeks ago, you would have paid way more, like $383.
So booking now for Memorial Day is much better than booking a month ago.
Definitely. But the flip side is, given that slight upward tick in last-minute prices we just saw, the report kind of suggests maybe locking in that $234 now might be wise, just in case it creeps up further before next week actually arrives.
Gotcha. So the window for the absolute best pre-Memorial Day deals might have passed, but booking now could still be better than waiting until the very last second.
That seems to be the thinking, yes.
What about right after Memorial Day, say early June?
Well, the advance prices shown online do show a pretty steep drop right after the holiday week.
Okay.
And when you combine that with the historical tendency for prices to be lower or flat in early June, it makes it seem unlikely that prices will shoot up above those lower post-Memorial Day levels, at least through early June.
So if you're traveling in that first couple of weeks of June, the outlook seems maybe a bit more stable, potentially more affordable?
Relatively speaking, yes. That window looks better than right before or during the holiday.
That's really helpful. Thinking back to last year, 2024, did we see anything similar in May and June? Any patterns?
Last year was interesting. May and June were actually pretty flat price-wise. No big dips, no big spikes.
Okay, stable.
Yeah, until right before the 4th of July. Then prices shot up sharply.
Right. So if this year follows last year's pattern, maybe look for decent deals in early June, but definitely don't wait if your trip includes July 4th.
That would be the strategy based on last year, yes. Lock in July 4th rates well ahead of time if that pattern repeats.
Good heads up. You also mentioned earlier that for a rental starting tomorrow, the best time to book would have been last week. Can you just run through those numbers one more time?
Sure. So cheapest economy car starting tomorrow, May 19th. Book it today. It's $227 for the week.
Okay.
If you'd booked that exact same rental just 1 week ago, last week, it would have been $222.
Ah, $5 cheaper. So a little saving.
A small saving, yeah, about 2%. But if you'd booked it 5 weeks ago, way back,
What then?
then it would have cost you $292. That's 22% more than booking it last week.
Wow, so booking way in advance wasn't the winner in this specific case. 1 week out was the sweet spot.
For this particular rental starting tomorrow, yes, it really highlights how timing can matter, sometimes just by a week or two.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Picking up the car. Airport versus off-airport locations in Maui. Is there still generally a price difference?
Generally, yes. The usual rule of thumb holds. Off-airport rentals tend to be cheaper.
Why is that usually the case?
It typically comes down to lower taxes and fees away from the airport. Plus, you often pay a bit of a convenience premium for picking up right there at the terminal.
Right, but the report mentioned this hasn't always been true recently.
That's correct. Over the past winter and spring, demand was really strong, and supply, especially off-airport, got tight.
Right.
And that actually flipped things around for a while. In many cases, off-airport rentals were more expensive than renting at the airport. It was quite unusual.
So what's the situation now? Are we back to normal with off-airport being cheaper again?
It looks like it's mostly back to that pattern now, yeah. The report suggests off-airport is generally cheaper again for most standard car types.
Most types. Are there exceptions still?
Yes. The current exceptions seem to be Jeeps and convertibles. They're actually showing up as cheaper at the airport right now.
Huh. Why might that be?
Possibly just limited supply of those specific fun vehicles at the off-airport locations they surveyed. Also, the survey didn't find any 7-seat SUVs available off-airport at all for this period.
Ah, okay. So if you need a big SUV, the airport might be your only option anyway, based on this data.
Could be. But for your standard economy, mid-size, regular SUVs and minivans, those are generally showing better deals off-airport again.
So bottom line is, definitely worth checking. Both options, airport and off-airport, when you're comparing prices. Don't just assume one is always cheaper anymore.
Absolutely. Compare everything.
And the report names the companies included in the survey, right? Just so people know who we're talking about.
It does. At Kahului Airport, OGG, it's 10 big ones. Alamo, Avis, Budget, Dollar, Enterprise, Hertz, National, Payless, 60, and Thrifty.
Okay, the usual suspects.
And for the off-airport comparison, they specifically looked at National, NU Car Rentals, Payless, 60, and Thrifty.
Good to know. Now, for context, how does Maui stack up against the other Hawaiian islands right now, cost-wise? Are rentals expensive everywhere, or is Maui still relatively okay?
That's a great question. The report did a quick comparison of the cheapest one-week rental starting this week, May 19th, at the main airports.
Okay, what did it find?
Honolulu, HNL, is currently the priciest at $341, and that's after a huge 44% jump just this week.
Whoa, okay.
Maui, OGG, is at that $227 we discussed, which was also a big jump, 38%. Kauai, LIH, is at $332, but interestingly, their prices actually went down 9%.
Down, okay.
Kona, KOA on the Big Island, is $231, basically no change from last week. And Hilo, ITO, also Big Island, is $255, down just slightly, 4%.
So even with that big jump, Maui is actually the cheapest of the major islands right now.
Based on these lowest available rates, yes. Maui is currently the most affordable, although Kona is really close behind, just $4 more per week.
Fascinating. So Maui and Honolulu saw big jumps. Kauai and Hilo saw small drops. Kona stayed flat, and Maui ends up being the cheapest, just barely. That's the current picture, yeah. Quite dynamic. This has been incredibly useful. Just finally, could you remind us where all this data comes from and how listeners can check rates for their own specific trips?
Definitely. So the tracking looks at 7 vehicle types across those 10 companies at OGG, and that's been going since July 2024. Tracking the absolute cheapest economy car goes back even further to July 2023.
Right, and the historical stuff, too.
And that historical analysis covered 2013 to 2018. The actual price data is pulled from rentalcars.com and also directly from rentals.mauicarental.biz.
Okay. And if someone wants to check now for their dates?
The report recommends heading over to the Cars and Rates section on rentals.mauicarental.biz. That site lets you compare 8 different companies across all their Maui spots: Airport, Kahului Town, Kiarulea, Kanapali.
Good coverage.
And importantly, they stress there's never a cancellation penalty if your plans change. So you can book something and keep looking if you want.
That no penalty cancellation is huge, gives you flexibility.
Okay, so just to wrap this up quickly. What are the main takeaways from this deep dive?
Well, Maui prices are up right now, heading into Memorial Day and summer. That seems clear. Demand is the driver.
Right.
Advanced booking prices suggest they'll keep going up, but history throws a bit of a curveball, hinting at potential dips, especially maybe in early June, outside the absolute peak times.
Okay, mixed signals there.
Off-airport seems to be generally cheaper again for most standard cars, but you absolutely have to compare. And for now, Maui is just edging out Kona as the cheapest major island for a rental.
Great summary. So here's maybe a final thought for everyone listening.
Yeah.
You've got these mixed signals, right? Prices rising now, history suggesting possible dips later, booking systems showing increases. How do you play it? What strategies might work best for snagging a decent deal in Maui over the next few weeks or months?
It definitely feels like research and maybe a bit of flexibility on dates or car type could really pay off this year.
Something to chew on. Thanks for breaking all that down for us. My pleasure.